Hey everybody, Fabian from Kaizen Softworks here. Welcome to the Kaizen Podcast. Thanks for coming. The Kaizen Podcast is produced every 2 weeks for your enjoyment. Show notes and links are found at podcast.kzsoftworks.com. Come back often and feel free to add the podcast to your favorite RSS feed, iTunes, Stitch, and Spotify. You can also follow me on Twitter at KZFabi. Now, let's get into the show. You're listening to episode number 3. Today we are talking about how WeWork, the co-work space company, ended up with a software development hub in Uruguay, which, by the way, just raised $1 billion from SoftBank last week. So for that, I'm here today with Diego Sapriza, who is a longtime friend, and he's also Director of Software Engineering at WeWork. So welcome to the show, Diego.
Thank you, Fabian. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for making the time today. So, Diego, can you introduce yourself to the audience? Tell us a little about you, your background, your current job in general terms.
Yeah, sure. So I'm, as you said, I'm an engineering director at WeWork. I manage right now a team that's located in Uruguay. My background is computer science, but I've been focused in management and process all my life. And the story that we are going to talk today is very interesting in that matter, like how like a team started from working in Uruguay and working for this like incredible company that's like have like super fast pace and velocity. So basically that's it. In Uruguay, we are 20 people and we are in a transition to the States right now that we are going to talk later.
Mm-hmm. Cool. All right. Great. So just to start this and break a little the ice, I'm starting a game with my guests that I'm calling Guest the Year, and you're my first test subject.
Okay.
I have to tell you. Are you ready for that?
Okay, let's try.
Okay. So, in which year was the term coworking coined? Do you know that?
If I need to guess, it will be like, I don't know, 2000s?
Yeah, you're pretty near. Wow. Yeah, it was 1999.
Oh, thanks.
And the guy was Bernard de Coven, who was an American game designer and fan theorist, coined the term. He meant a different thing, I have to say. I was reading a post about that. I will leave the post link on the notes of this show because that's not the reason that why we are talking today. But the term that Bernard coined in 1999 was the term that we use today to define the co-work spaces that WeWork has, right? So,
yeah.
So it all started with Centra, am I right?
So actually it started before.
Before that? Okay.
Centra was Centra. So we had a company that was called Strict Solution, and kind of the story started in 2008.
Okay.
Basically, everything started like talking with a friend that had a friend in New York that need to build like a web page as everything starts, right? Mm-hmm. And so we've been doing with this friend, Javier from Good Media, been doing like services in Uruguay and for people in the US. And so he contacted me with their friends in New York, and yeah, everything started in like November, like talks in April, and April 2008, and yeah, the story started there. Like we can say like 10 years ago.
10
almost.
years. Wow. And for how long have you been in the industry? How many years?
So I started working in services in general 2003. Mainly doing kind of a link between software development and infrastructure, and that's kind of what our expertise. We didn't start us usually start building pages. We start like developing systems for companies, and that usually work in Excel, but we try to build like management system. I remember one of the first system was a system for a school in 2003, and so basically we started in 2003, and we had management, Linux services, operations, and that's kind of it till we kind of like transition into mainly software development in 2009, based mainly because of this activity with these guys from New York.
Wow. So while I was studying IT systems, you were already working and doing cool stuff.
Yeah, it like the journey was that's super interesting, at least in our side. Like starting from like learning PHP in 2009, building systems,
Mhm,
getting my degree, and start talking with clients and building systems that connects
mhm.
and do like connection with legacy system. That was pretty intense in that years.
Wow. So you said you started with a friend in 2008, a friend from New York, and that was pretty much how it all started. Then you founded Centra.
Yeah,
Is
so yeah, exactly. And that relationship was kind of interesting because we, I remember 2009, well, no, 2008, starting this and thinking of how we can create like a relationship that could be long term, obviously,
mm-hmm,
because that's what we want. And we want to generate trust with these companies. And it was like a mutual friend and this like Federico, David, and started like they worked for like an architecture firm in the U.S. and then they wanted to build kind of a startup, and we basically were the ones that were coordinating Uruguay, like creating those processes, like creating that software.
mm-hmm,
So that was kind of the kickoff. The interesting thing about was it was kind of the business model. We were pursuing like agile contracts, and that I think was like an amazing decision for ourselves because we kind of show them that we want to make this very value oriented. So
mm-hmm.
if they say to us stop, we stop, and we kind of like share the risk on this project that
Right.
was super interesting.
That's the
Um,
flexibility the agile contracts offer, right?
exactly. So and obviously those kind of contracts work if there's a lot of trust between the parties, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of it. That started there, and we worked for almost 3-4 years, let me think, like 3 years in this kind of startup
Mm-hmm.
thing, and
What
that
was that your only customer in Centra, or did you have
no,
others?
we had a bunch of customers. We have like 30% in Uruguay, in like 5 or 6 in the US.
Mm-hmm.
So Case in this case, but Case Inc.
Mm-hmm.
was one of the customers, and it wasn't Case in this sense, right? It was like these guys that wanted to build a startup. Case was created later, after the
Right.
fact after we started working with them, and they created their company. The Case started in New York while we were developing this like startup. That's what's called Who By You, and in Uruguay, and it was an interesting year, right? 2008, 2009, Facebook, Foursquare, like APIs for all over the place, GraphQL, like from a technology standpoint, was crazy, and yeah, so everything started there, and in 2011, kind of, we started working full time for Case because, and this is kind of the relationship that start growing when you create like a lot of trust, and this in this case, their company, we start working for the clients and delivering software for them, and this happens a lot. You get into a situation where it's kind of weird that you need to ask for a quote, and basically you have one client, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
This is the weird thing, and you start growing based on that client, and you start getting like a lot of matter expertise
On
on
the
what they
business and
do,
the
on
right.
the business and how, and the processes, and so the transition to become part of Case was kind of of like something that was normal, right? And we were kind of growing here in Uruguay, hiring people, hiring engineers, and mainly because we were growing our relationship with Case, and that was kind of it.
Mm-hmm. So, how big was the team?
So when I started, like in 2008, we were 3,
Mm-hmm.
and then we keep growing. I think in 2011, 12, when transition to Case, we were 6, um, and then yeah, we're 6 on that time, and then we keep growing. And one thing that's important is that we didn't grow just because of growing, because sometimes um, this is like a very startup thing, and I'm seeing it in a lot of places. You just hire people because you need to show that you are growing,
Right.
So we're very focusing growing the team if we need to, right? And so we have a very small team that's very focused and super efficient. So processes and the relationship with our clients and partners are very important, right?
Right.
So till like right now, we are almost 20 in Uruguay now, 19
So
actually.
the important thing was just to deliver good value and at a good performance, and not just having 20, 30, or 40 people, right?
Right. It's about delivering what your client needs, right? And that's part of all the agility mindset thing and figuring out what's important, what's not. And obviously, having like a good relationship with who you're working for is very important because you should be okay and say no, that makes no sense, or you're just doing things that make no sense. Obviously, the transition was kind of like we can say interesting because we came from a relationship with a company that we were fully agile till having clients in the architectural world, the construction world, where agility is a different thing, right? Mainly you can't do agility, right? And in that world, obviously the contracts were kind of like waterfall thing, and so like we were in this was interesting thing where we want to build agile, not in an agile world, right? And because like you have a contract for a year, for example,
Right.
And that's it, and that's kind of it, and basically you have like a lot of requirements by your team, obviously want to make the big impact first, and so it was and we learned a lot on that process about agility. It's agility, and it depends on the client, depends on the team, depends on what are you doing, right? You can't always execute the same process, and you need to adapt. So I think adaptation and be prepared for change is one of the most important principles a team should pursue.
Right. So you started. You say that you started with friends in New York, but were you looking to work for the U.S. because X reasons, or was it just a matter of life?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So we as a country, we are very good position. We have amazing talent, right? And obviously, Uruguay, it's amazing to live. Like living in Uruguay, it's amazing. And but I think we were not actually looking to work for American company. It just happened. Obviously, we were talking with my partner about doing that. And but what I discovered is that we have an amazing talent. We are in the right time zone. English is not a barrier at all, right? And obviously, from a taxing perspective, is super interesting too. Like laws in general, like help a lot. Obviously, there's a lot of things that need to be done to enable kind of like small companies or friends that just want to work for the U.S. or different countries. But I think the environment in Uruguay helped us a lot to just do it, and obviously like kind of like creating those relationships. But the Uruguay IT environment enables companies to work with U.S. companies pretty straightforward, and it's pretty straightforward manner.
Right. So, and you said that the talent is really good here in Uruguay, but did Centra also consider that a factor on the decision on why working with you? Did they express their feedback about the good quality of the work of the talent they found with you?
So that's an interesting question. So you're talking about case, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's not just the important thing here is like obviously for a company in Uruguay to get talent, it's important. But it's not just talent; it's about the culture too, and like delivery and like be honest, very honest in a lot of things. So I think that's part of our culture as Uruguayans, right? And obviously talent helps a lot, right? We have very good very good like universities for that, and but it's not just the talent. In this case, the relationship happened, and we put a lot of effort in creating like a lot of trust between us and the U.S. company, and I'm seeing this a lot. Like more and more companies are creating this are creating these relationships that can obviously that help Uruguay a lot. Something that's kind of in our case was kind of different was because we transitioned to case and working full time to case for case. It was not like a Uruguayan company working for a New York company, right? We were a remote team, if you think about it. And that changed kind of like, right, that changed the logistics a bit, obviously. And that's what's happened at WeWork right now, right? You are part of something bigger than your team in Uruguay. And, but like, we have very good culture. We have very good talent. And that's something that we need to invest a lot in culture in Uruguay. I think we have the talent, people can grow. And something that I think we need to start working more is like attitude of like, we need to grow a bit in attitude of growth in Uruguay, right? That's kind of like taking risks in this kind of companies, and like there's a lot of people working from Uruguay, right? And there's not enough people to hire, and this is one of the main problems that I find out, like I discovered while trying to hire people, right? And so that's something that we need to figure out as a country, right? Yeah. But the important thing, going back to your question, is not just about the talent; it's about a relationship you create with the companies, and I think we are very good positioned in this case.
And you are making a lot of emphasis on the trust, and I'm going to ask you, how do you start building that trust with your customer, with case in this case, and how do you keep building that trust?
Now, okay, so I'm a culture guy, right? And obviously I love, like I manage a lot of people, and it's culture first always. And part of like creating like very good cultural environments is about trust, right? And so how to do it? It's about a lot of talk, face to face, delivering, having like very good expectations, understanding what you're going to do and what you're not going to do, right? Understanding the why we are doing things, because sometimes we're so used to engineering, when a client asks for something, you just go and do it, but you understand the why, right? And asking the why we're doing these things generate a lot of trust, right? And at the same time, I'm doing that and asking about the why we do things, and that's us engineers, and we can help our clients to think things like and rethink them, think their strategy. We know we have a lot of knowledge on that side, so that generates trust, right? We need to help our clients to take the right decision. We are not, obviously we are doing this for money, and because we love it, and because we need to leave. But on the other side, we want our clients to be successful too, right? And if you don't get into those, if you don't follow that kind of relationship, it's not going to work. Like it's a short-term relationship, and that's why sometimes you need to say no to clients, or maybe you need to fire clients. Like as an owner of a company, it should be very important to say, okay, client, I'm not going to give you, like, I'm going to serve you a lot, like again, or I'm not going to deliver, because like, again, it's about trust. If there's no trust, there's no point to keep investing time in those relationships. That's life, right? And so trust is everything. If I can't trust a client or can't trust an engineer, I prefer not to have that relationship, because at the end, we are a remote company, right? Or you're a remote team, and you want to work and you want to deliver, and you don't want people to micromanage you and start just asking for stuff that makes no sense or be on top of you. You just want everything go smooth and deliver what you need in the right moment.
I totally agree with that. So in 2011, and you already mentioned it, but
Case transitioning from being a customer to buying Centra, Centra to being
Right.
Case, right?
Right. So basically, we went for like just having like hours, so say full time working for Case. That's what's kind of,
Working for Case.
yeah.
So not a buying decision.
It was not a buying decision.
So, and we already talked about the advantage of being in Uruguay,
Mhm.
but did Case think about any other country, consider any other company based in any other country of South America?
Right. So Case was interesting as a company. Um, Young people, half of the, like, for example, we were like 60 people all around the world. But the interesting thing was that even in the US, half of the employees at Case were remote. Right. So it wasn't to think about, oh, we want to grow in a different country,
Oh,
because we're very focused as a company as Case in like the US. But as a company, it was very interesting to see like half of the employees were remote, and obviously we were a remote team in. But the rest of the people working for Case, half of them in the U.S. were remote, and half of them were working from New York, right? But obviously, as a consulting company, the thing about consultants is that you need, while you grow and you have more clients, you need to grow people, right? You need to get bigger and bigger and bigger, right? And obviously we were growing in Uruguay because we needed more engineers, but at the same time we were growing in the US. But we have clients in England and other part of the world, but the talent was basically in the US and Uruguay, and we have people, like remote people in different places, but was mainly there.
so and after the transition to being fully
Mhm.
dedicated to Case, besides you traveling to the US to the New York offices of
Mhm.
Case, did the team also travel there?
Yeah. So yes, totally. And obviously, the first years, the relationship was remote mainly, but then because we're actually part of a US company, we start traveling, and face to face in remote team is very important. Obviously, we usually push, oh yeah, you're using Slack or using like Zoom, Hangouts, whatever, but face to face is different. So when you have remote teams, you need to have that face to face at least once a year, right? So at Case, what we did, and that's something that happened to WeWork, is like we have the summits, and so basically all employees travel. In this case, at Case, we travel. We went to New York, and then we have a summit in San Francisco, and I remember I think we have one in Miami, right? So that works a lot. And obviously per project, you have sometimes have people flying to US because you need to go to a client's office or something, or because you need to like sit down with your client or whatever, right? Obviously, it's very hard to do whiteboarding, even though we have a lot of technology, but you need to go and travel. So traveling was something we are used to, and that's was part of our the team's life, we could say.
So, if you have to remember one thing the Americans at Case love about you, your company, and Uruguay, what is it?
Maybe I kind of like repeating myself, but think about like the trust on delivering and that you're doing the best thing for the company is kind of like the thing. I usually get involved in the business side of it and try to understand the why we're doing that and giving ideas about it. And obviously, sometimes you can do it right or do it wrong, but whatever. Like learning, like because we wanted to learn the business. In this case, was a very different thing. It's not like, oh yeah, you do like banking systems or whatever. Like this architecture, this construction, that's something that was totally new for us. But trust is, I think, that was the differentiator in our case, and obviously taking the time to grow those relationships with our US team, basically.
Yeah, showing interest for
Yeah.
what they do and learning more.
Yeah.
That's how you build the trust.
The harder thing of this transition was basically move like changing the mindset of being like a remote team or a remote company to understand that you are part of a bigger thing. right? And because you're a remote team, you have your culture, your interactions. Obviously, you are part of like a bigger thing that have its culture, right? And maybe it's different, maybe it's not, but like the dynamics change the way you work, and that takes time, right? There's no like a way of just moving to be a remote team to just, oh, now you're part of a bigger company, just figure it out. It takes time for a team just to understand the logistics and understand the new culture, right? And
How much time did it take?
it took like a year to actually understand it, and obviously change generates anxiety in a team always. But as managers or leads or leaders, that's our job, right? To handle that and help your team transition on change, right? And I think it took like a year to get fully embedded in the company culture.
Did somebody from Case ever come here to Uruguay to visit you?
Yeah. So yeah, that happened a bunch of time. One of the case, so this friend that we have in common, one of the case owner was from Uruguay. He's from Uruguay,
Oh.
and so he traveled a couple of times. And yeah, well, it wasn't too much, but once a year we have somebody from Case Uruguay, and we usually do it the other way around, right? We travel to New York offices more than people traveling from New York to Uruguay. That kind of changed a bit in at WeWork, but in Case that was the relationship, you could say.
And for the non-Uruguayans from Case that traveled to Uruguay, what was their first impression about the country?
So uh, I guess I like that happened more at WeWork, and I saw the impact more at WeWork. That they love the culture. We have a culture that's super interesting. It's very different. Um, we like the main impact is that like the culture we have in our offices, the interactions, the everything like friendship. It's what it makes the most impact. The dynamics of a team is different, right? Obviously, maybe it's too because we're smaller country, and we are like we invest a lot in our relationships. Obviously, it's not the same. Like we are not talking about family, but like your team is like you're working 8 hours a week, 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week with your team. So we put a lot of work in like the culture side. So that's kind of the first thing, like the culture, friendship, that that immediately after this. Like for example, if you're gonna do like an asado or barbecue, call it the way you want it. It's like what happened in that moments, like the mate, like all that stuff is very interesting for them. But it's not just because you drink it; it's all the cultural interactions that happen. That it's totally different.
So, moving forward, in August 2015, Case was acquired by WeWork, right? In a deal that probably makes total sense for
Yep.
WeWork.
Yeah.
How did this
Yeah.
impact Case Uruguay, you and your daily work?
Yeah. That's an interesting question. So at first, it didn't impact it kind of nothing, right? We just keep working the way we were working because, yeah, okay, we were acquired Case. Again, the story is very similar, right? You start working with a client, and then that client is like taking a lot of like of your work, and then it just happened. But in our case, we keep working because we like my team in Uruguay was very focused with in building software for WeWork, right? Because it was a big client. So the transition kind of we didn't realize about it in the first 6 months. We just keep working, and then till it clicked, it's like, dude, we are part of this huge company, and we just like keep working by inertia. And we were a very interesting company to work for, but it didn't click till 6 months later. Obviously, we start traveling. I remember our first summit in New York. That was kind of when it clicked. So in January 2016, we went with the whole team to New York, and that was it. That was a moment of okay, we are part of this craziness.
How many people?
So I am like employee number 1,000, right?
Thousands.
So I think like some summit were like 1,200
Wow.
something, and now we
How many
are
people?
in I think 6,000 or 5,000 employees. So that was when it clicked, right? We were part of a company that we were 60 people till 1,000, and it was like, yeah, it's a totally different dynamic, right? And it's a different speed, and how you scale, how you work, it's totally different. And that again, it was kind of like as leader and of my team starting. It was kind of okay. We need to deal with it, and let's figure out how we can evolve into a part of this made like crazy company, right? Because it's crazy. Like WeWork, it's very interesting. Obviously, when you are acquired, you have a culture. Again, same thing. What happened with my like when I was working for my company and then we started working full time for Case. It's like obviously the culture changes because you have like a dominant culture, right? You are embedded in this dominant culture, and then you have your own culture, and sometimes it fits, sometimes it doesn't. So you need to evolve, right? So evolution, it's important. This and thinking about scale, and from a cultural perspective, it's a key aspect. Having like happy engineers and happy teammates and happy people, right? But that first trip to New York was impressive. Yeah, it was crazy.
So you were saying that WeWork was already a customer of Case.
Yep.
And what were the first comments by WeWork when they found out that they were working also with a bunch of guys from Uruguay?
Well, I think right now companies are global, right? So it just happened. We just went part of WeWork. Right now, WeWork have offices in a lot of places. We have offices. We have engineering teams in like in Tel Aviv, Singapore, Shanghai, San Francisco, New York, right, and Seattle. Obviously, we were kind of like the first remote team, so that was new for WeWork. Um, so it was a learning process, most for us, mainly for our team, to understand how to work with this big remote company, right? And that have like an HQ in New York. Because Case was different. Case was had most of the team at Case was remote, but like WeWork was the HQ was kind of like the central place, and it was in it is in New York. But now we are all over the world, right? So it was interesting. I can't tell you what exactly like people said in New York about, oh yeah, okay, we acquired this company, and they have engineers in Uruguay. But again, as a Uruguayan, we keep working and showing what we do best. That's delivering value. And after we've been working for WeWork till like I think like the Uruguayan WeWork Uruguay was created in December 1st, right? WeWork Uruguay was created there then. So we can say that we almost like 3 years working for WeWork, it's interesting. Like once you start growing and having remote location, it's less awkward. Obviously, at first, it was a challenge uh, because WeWork was not like a company that had like remote teams, right? And obviously we in Uruguay we change a lot of our dynamics and based on that, like thinking about how we can multiply our impact in our customer. Obviously, the main difference right now is instead of like working for clients, and that was kind of like the big click. And that we have a case like at Case we work for case clients, and now we're working for ourselves. We were building systems for WeWork,
Yeah,
right?
that
Our
our
own
own
system.
company uses.
Right. So that's kind of different. We were building stuff for us, right? So that was kind of the first change in the mindset.
Which is
And
even cooler, right?
that's cooler because you can do a lot of things, right? And you can take time to like think about how to do things, and you can go faster or slower based on on your company, right?
Right.
And you can take and then you can take the time to think about a lot of things beforehand or not, right? That's kind of the interesting things about building software for you. On the other side, WeWork it's growing so much, and right now we are in like I don't know 22 countries, and the growth is impressive. So the pace is huge, and obviously adapting is different right now. Like we're working 4Ks. Um, the pace depend on the client and the speed of a client, but now it's like when we start working for WeWork, we had one business line, right? It was a co-working, and now we have seven,
Oh.
right? And that happened in less than 3 years, right? So the way you build software, and it totally changed, right? You need to build instead of like building for a client that basically you build a software and maybe you are not going to see them again. You are building things that are going to change in 6 months, or you don't know. There's no way to plan for a year from now, right? Because it's crazy, and that's kind of like the way it changed the dynamics.
So Uruguay offices of WeWork lasted for 3 years, right? And you are now transitioning
Yeah,
to California. You recently moved there with your family, right?
yeah. I'm California right now.
Cool. And so why is this decision from WeWork to move the team there?
Yeah. So that's an interesting question. Mainly because of growth of the teams and giving people the opportunity to work with amazing talent. Obviously, in Uruguay, we have an amazing talent, but like I don't know, my boss is like from Amazon, right? And the VP is from Spotify. So it's 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 a totally different dynamic. So this will give the Uruguayan team the opportunity to work with crazy talent,
Yeah.
and obviously California, San Francisco, Silicon Valley. This is crazy, right?
Yeah,
So
you're
obviously,
growing to levels that you were not expecting, right?
exactly, and I think that's the why. It's like okay, we're moving, right? We are changing like moving the bar, moving up the bar, and giving the team an opportunity to see to see by themselves how this works, and because like and you have this scale and growth and obviously hiring it's interesting in Uruguay. Something that I discovered is like we have a very good engineering talent, but there's a lot to we need better managers, right? And engineer managers. And we don't have that talent yet or too much. So hiring that talent is very difficult in Uruguay. You can get like a lot of an engineer, like developers, etc., but hiring engineer managers, that's very difficult. Even like product managers, right? And the thing is like that's kind of the main reason, right? We wanted to give our team the opportunity to grow, right, and to work with talent that's crazy, right? And so I don't know. Right now, I'm working with people that come from Twitter, Facebook, Amazon, right? And it's a totally different way of thinking. That's cool. You're working Uruguay, growing like crazy, like thinking like developing crazy stuff, but it's not the scale, you know. You need to work with like people that know to work at scale, right? And that's something that the only way to do it is actually work in person and move the team. So this is a fantastic opportunity for the Uruguayan team to just start working in the best world, or like engineering world or engineering place ever.
And is the whole team moving to California?
Basically, most of them, and some of them they're not. Some of them they're moving to New York. Some of them are staying in Uruguay. So that's kind of it.
So we are coming to the end of the podcast, but just before saying goodbye to the audience, I just want to mention know your thoughts about the latest acquisitions. Well, not the latest, but maybe two acquisitions in the last couple of years by WeWork. One was Flatiron School, which you shared a post with me. Flatiron School, for those who don't know, it is a coding education platform with online and offline courses.
Yep.
And I think it looks like WeWork is making different acquisitions related to the whole life cycle of the businesses they offer co-work spaces to. because later in November 2017, WeWork acquired
Hmm.
Meetup, which is a platform pretty much used everywhere in the world to host meetups and manage meetups, and how all the attendees managed through that platform.
Yep.
And so, what are your thoughts around these acquisitions?
Yeah. So so WeWork WeWork it's a mission oriented company, right? Our mission is to create a world where people um, where people work to make a life, not a living, right? That's our mantra. And obviously, having like amazing offices is not everything. Um, the interesting thing is that we have spaces that can be used for on by different communities, and meetup have those communities. So and you know, like you and me, like a lot of our friends, we've been hosting meetups, and one of the main issues is like where we're gonna host it, right? So it kind of makes sense, right? Is like, oh, okay, you have co-working spaces in 22 countries, right? And what if we just like deliver the spaces to the communities and we can make them available? So
That
that's
makes
kind of
total
like
sense.
makes total sense, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, we have a company that build these amazing spaces, and we have this other company that have these amazing communities. And the main problem with on this community is to find spaces, so it makes sense, right? Um, and that's kind of like that's kind of the main reason. And one of the things like we want to give our members and our employees a way to close the gap in different things. So obviously, at WeWork, we have like different groups, right? That there are kind of like internal meetups, and now we have the technology to do it, right? And now all the meetup kind of community have access to the spaces, right? Apart from like meetup having an amazing engineering team, an amazing CEO, right? It makes sense, like it clicks, like it's filling the gaps. Same thing as Flatiron. Um, Flatiron um, it helps us to give our members and employees or to expand their knowledge and skill set. So it's the same thing. It's like helping our members, right? And right now, for example, I have people in my team that are being trained by Flatiron, right? They have like taken their online courses. So kind of like the why of all this is like to multiply and give our members and employees like tools, right? And sometimes like the meetup acquisition, it just clicks. It just like, oh, okay, it makes total sense, right? Eventually, we're gonna have access to WeWorks, to spaces all around the world. And that's it. And as a meetup organizer, we are not going to have this issue about finding where we're gonna host our meetup. We'll just have access. So that's kind of like the why, right? Helping our members and employees to figure out things and making them just to focus in their main expertise, not figuring out where they're gonna host something, right? We just like, okay, we just help you because this is the technology, these are the spaces, right? It just clicks, or just like, right?
Yeah, it makes sense. Well, all right. I just want to say thank you so much for your time, Diego. I remember that we met back in probably 2012 when you were organizing the tech meetup events for the community in Uruguay. And also thanks to the meetup.com website that we were talking about, right?
And I really enjoy all the times that we met
Yeah.
in conferences, events. You talked a lot to me, and I learned a lot of from you about the community. So I really appreciate you. I really think that you are doing a really good job,
Thank you.
and I wish you the best in WeWork and all your life now.
Thank you very much. I think like community in general, it's a key component of this. We believe that at WeWork, and community and culture and like just wanting to help others, because by helping others you grow a lot, right? And that's part of the why we've been doing that. The conferences, you're having like an amazing conference too, and I know that like a lot of people just like are growing a lot just because you guys are doing that. And again, like the conference was a nice chapter in our life, and I'm very happy, and because we kind of like enable a lot of the movement in the engineering community in Uruguay. And thank you very much for inviting me. I'm always open for this like brainstorming discussions and sharing, because I think sharing is a way to grow, and that's very important.
Thanks everyone for listening to the Kaizen podcast. This podcast has been brought to you by Kaizen Softworks. Check us out at kcsoftworks.com.